Okay, so I guess now we're live. Hey again, Tara. uh, okay, so we were chatting for a few minutes about a potential summer pilot program,
Mhm.
and bringing together the idea of a summit, of a pilot, of in person, and utilizing Wequil App, and trying to put it all together. Uh, Particularly now, in the name of dope, the development of public education, which I just really like it. It's kind of that sweet spot of just enticing and interesting enough for people, but also it is gonna be dope. Like, what does that word mean to you, by the way, Tara? If something is dope, what is that?
Dope. I would immediately say it's like a synonym for the word cool. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
it's dope.
And also, it has the potential to be even more cool than cool, but also
Yeah.
like potentially a little bit cringe if people sort of make it cringe.
But also very enthusiastic about it. Like, yeah, it's dope.
Yeah. Yeah. And that isn't that part of it too, is that, the more people get excited, the more exciting it is. And you it's really like, any new brand, like Apple, for example. It's literally just a fruit. It doesn't really mean anything, but, Apple kinda has a cool feel to it, like a little high-end, very much interested in design. I mean, Steve Jobs was a really interesting dude. Not, also controversial. Not everyone enjoyed working with him, but that eye for elegance and the almost the UX guy and things just working, and he had sort of a philosophy. This is just from what I saw, like documentaries and everything, and I saw him do a bunch of live events too. But he has a little bit of Eastern philosophy in him, where like he believes in balance, and that there's something greater to that experience, and it needs to work, it needs to flow. So there's some pretty cool concepts too, but the idea of I almost feel like he vibe coded Apple in some sense. Like, there's this really great Bill Burr bit, where he's talking about Steve Jobs, and he's like, "Yeah, so this guy, he just goes in, he just starts telling everyone what to do. He's like, hey, make it work. I don't know, just do it," and something like that. And so yeah, so in some sense, that's also what everybody does. We all have these ideas, these visions, and maybe we can make it come to life, but maybe we need a little bit of help with some technical expertise. Um, but so anyway, so the uh the summer program, which may or may not even be the idea that I want to flesh out. It could turn into just where we take the academy. I don't know, but for me, it feels like we might start with the summer, because that's something that we could have as more of a special program than something long term as like a public education proposal. Um, so kind of to recap for the live stream, Tara, I'm wondering if we can have this development of public education, what was a summit, kind of bringing that together in a program for the kids and potentially the community that is financially attractive. That is potentially really just practicing what we're preaching of care, where we're promoting values, but we're also getting things done in terms of potentially proposing some fairly substantial changes, or a painting a vision for the future of education, possibly public education as well, that comes from the community, and potentially partners like researchers, could have a fundraising aspect. Just this great movement that we know needs to happen, but I feel like there hasn't been a real impetus. There have been signals, and we've been talking about some of those, particularly with that executive order, for the Department of Education. And but there's also organizations that are focused on education, universities that are really thinking about these things, but there isn't that, like, this is the thing where we need to come together, and to get really excited about. So what I'm sort of thinking is, if we were gonna have an in-person academy program and this Root to Rise, program that we're partnering with, and all this is just really exciting and wonderful too. And part of the vision is that when you have a learning community that perhaps operates during the day, it's like what are teens and families, what do they have access to in the evening for really fun, cool things for the family to do, particularly for the kids and the teens, that isn't contrived, it's meaningful, but it's also it's wholesome, it's learning based, but something that can add value and engage the community, that it's such that it's not as exclusive, but uh, sort of models why schools exist. That's beyond just the intellectual and social development of individual human beings, because there is this reciprocal relationship between schools and communities. It's not just that the community influences schools, but the school affects the culture of the community. And at the ideal state, there would be that symbiotic relationship, and that everyone would flourish and potentially have places of learning, and places in the community be places of gathering, so that we have that social trust. It's not even cohesion so much, because I feel like something cohesion almost makes it seem like we want everyone to sort of like do the same thing. But for people to come together, and even just be able to meet people, to share, to create something together, to contribute to something, their voices are heard, they're able to learn a valuable skill, a trade, knowledge, whatever the thing is, make connections around the world, or in their hometown. And so having something where we can accomplish something together, where people can contribute it to it, in a very substantial way, or a way that is a little more bite sized. So something where you can maybe come each day, where you can maybe commit to, maybe the program lasts for 2 weeks or a month, and you can be one of those constants who really has a leadership position in the summit, or the pilot program. Something where there's outreach to other schools, and getting people involved, where we can have, by the end, some large sort of proposal and these findings from some multi-week pilot that we're doing, so that we can say, look, we've had all these pilots already. This is kind of like that next stage, where this is almost the pilot for the visioneering aspect of this. Because like I think there should be some outward aspect and some inward aspect for any large program like this, where it's not just people are coming together and saying, hey, this is what we should do. Like, for instance, I'm thinking of the founding fathers writing that the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence. I'm sure there was a lot of piloting as well. But from what we can see, like, we didn't have video back then, and so we have this directive, in a way, or declaration of what we are going to do. But I think almost like the documentary, the process, kind of what we're doing right now, the build in public, that's really valuable too, so that people can see that progression and that model. And to do all that, I think it can be done. If you get a bunch of kids together, a bunch of students, families that really care, that want to do something substantial, but it's not going to be maybe too much of a commitment, although it could be, finding that sweet spot for everyone, and having it be where it's not going to cost a bunch of money, if anything at all. I think having it be net free is really important, because we can do things like fundraisers. We can have scholarships and grants opportunities. We have money to invest in something like this, and it's really important. And I think everything that we do that's related to something like this should be something that we could very easily see translate into a public model. Something that like, we don't want people to come in and say, oh, but you couldn't scale that because XYZ. You have these resource constraints. You have these knowledge, whatever the constraint may be. So with that, like, some of that like broad picture, that was sort of what Joe and I were talking about yesterday. What's some of your first reaction to sort of bringing all that together in a summer program?
Honestly, my first reaction to it is that I want to move to America. I want to be involved.
Hey, you are. Does this make you my ancestor? So I have my mom's side is from Hungary and Eastern Europe. My dad's side is you may be blood related. Because my dad's side is kind of from the UK area. Like, so we did the ancestry or the 23andMe, one of those ancestry
Mhm.
saliva things, which I didn't realize how much the LDS Church, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter Day Saints, is all into the family history work. I think it's
Okay.
ancestry.com that's sort of managed by what some people think of as the Mormon Church.
Oh,
But
how?
it's pretty amazing, like how important family is to some cultures, to some religions. Anyways, so we did that, and I kind of have a little bit of an understanding for where my family is. And on my mom's side, they've got a big family history book where like people in my mom's side of
That's
the
so
family,
cool.
we can tell like how a few people died and who everybody was, and so that's pretty cool. But yeah, but we may be related, and you can come on over. I don't know that how accessible my townhome is, but there's an extra room here. It is very small. I don't know if it would be somewhere where you and Jed could stay, but I'm sure we can figure that out. So you can come on over. You got your Wequil shirt on, and then we'll just help everybody care. uh, and
Yeah,
so like,
other than that, it sounds, uh, as a concept, it sounds perfect, really.
mm,
Like, exactly what we all want to be doing, and having that, physical location, I think, would help, uh, like, the homeschool kids that get involved with this. It would help them acclimatize more to, just being out in the world and being actually physically face to face with people as opposed to just through the screen most of the time.
yeah. And and I think it could also be a good almost melting pot of opening people's eyes to the types of education people are involved in. Because if you have students who are homeschooled coming together with folks who are in the public system, who are in private traditional schools, you have folks who are kind of questioning what they want to do. You've got families and teachers who may have left the system and they want to give back and kind of come with the pitchforks, but have everyone come together and do something more real than complaining,
Yeah,
which is going to be a really delicate thing because especially since COVID, I think teachers and unions and advocacy groups and nonprofits and for profit, folks are coming together, and we have a pretty deep understanding of what a lot of our issues are right now, but we don't know how to talk about change and solutions because we have these particular issues that we often cling to that are they end up sort of being band-aids even though they're really really important, but we know that you can't just have one issue attempt to be resolved in something like education because it is all interconnected, which is why I think coming together and analyzing what some of those are, but also who are we, and understanding that we not only have some core values as a community, but we still don't have a like an illustrative vision for what learning could even be like. When I was interviewing a lot of students about some of this throughout the past few years in my doctorate program, and teachers, like it's really difficult for folks who are in a system right now to imagine something that's fundamentally different, because like even students would say things like, oh well, maybe the school lunch could be improved a little bit, and here's a couple items like better cookies, or maybe like an extra couple minutes between classes, but like you could tell that like the whole concept of rethinking education has a barrier to entry because when people don't people d- it- and it's almost not even fair to say that people don't know any different. It's that well, it is the exposure piece, but it's like when you are inspired with a completely new model, that's where I think people start to be like, oh wow, like when I first came to Wequil and saw people in pods, I mean, I had some experience with that, particularly in COVID when I was in Peru, but it's still like it's a little bit shocking. Like it's almost like I had to uh, uh, un or de-school and relearn education in some ways. Like I was getting schooled by students, which I've always done. But this was like next level because at an administrative level, that when I've worked with students who are thinking, oh yeah, maybe the cookies could be improved. Like it's kind of difficult to engage in that really meaningful rethinking. But that I think is going to be some of the challenge of how do you get a bunch of people together and not have it be a lot of chaos at the beginning because it's so much new to think about, and how do we even go about planning for change when the possibility is endless, but that's also potentially risky. It's for everyone to come together and not have like a almost like an MVP to start with. That I think could be quite important for us to say, look, here's what we've tried, and here's like proposal one for what we might explore. Maybe there's proposal two, proposal three of a few MVPs. Do you think that it might be good to have a few like piloted options fleshed out that we might start with? Or do you think we like people might come together and just like brain dump all different options and see if we can find the through line? Because that's a much uh, deeper level of creativity and potential like trust building to start off with when it's a totally blank slate versus a few ideas to sort of get the juices flowing.
I think it'd probably be best to work with a few ideas at first, just so all of the people coming together um, feel like there's some sense of direction and structure already in place.
Hmm.
Like, even if it is open to other ideas, people still feel secure in just coming to it and feeling like it's organized and things are happening.
Right, right. Yeah, I agree with that. And it's almost like if you have multiple options that people are considering, even if one of them is not good at all, I find it's always helpful. Like when you have a bad idea, there's almost always something good in there that you can apply to something else. So in that sense, like I don't believe in a lot of bad ideas because or the concept of a bad idea because there's going to be value in there somewhere, even if we can analyze why it's not a good idea. Now it's a good exercise. And so yeah, I also think that with enough people, but a size that's manageable. Although even let's say we have 100 people come together for a summer program, you can manage a lot more than 100 if you have like a team that can go out and sort of be in individual leadership pod positions where you can end up having cohorts of like different teams that go out and build their team up, and then we've got people who are leaders of those teams who can have a leadership team, and then we can sort of like do that. There's this in my first ed leadership class that I did at George Mason University here in Virginia. We used this large scale decision making, I guess, like technique called the nominal group technique. And it's fairly intuitive. Like you get people in a large group, like in a big classroom, into smaller groups. And then everyone brain dumps in the smaller groups a bunch of ideas. I think we were trying to come up with a name for like a new school or something. It was like just a theoretical exercise. And so we put a bunch of ideas down, and then as individual groups, we chose like our top 1 to 3 ideas to kind of put forth to the big group, and then there was like someone in each of the small groups who like shared what those ideas were. So it was kind of organized. So it's like you started off where everyone's voices were heard, but then like there was a decision made about kind of narrowing that down, and then a representative took that good idea that all the group was really happy about, which kind of like brings a lot to the idea. Like you're not just throwing it out. Like a group of people thought it was good, then to put that forth to the whole group, and then the whole group now has like a couple dozen ideas to choose from, but then you can kind of like parse it down from there so that there's sort of stages. So like having something like that, I think having a almost a nominal group technique, but in an evaluation style, because that's sort of what this is almost a program evaluation at scale, where we're gonna identify what our assets are as well. Because as a community, like it's not just let's find a solution. Like even having an inventory or an understanding of who we are, like what we even could do. There's a group that I attend. It's called Amigas Sin Fronteras. It's like ladies like without barriers or without boundaries. And it's this support group for this group of Latin American women who are in my community who I've been kind of adopted by. And they're amazing, amazingly fun group, and a really supportive group too, because there's a service component. There's these monthly meetings, and there's these plans to have a retreat and going out and helping people, and also bringing in speakers. And I've been invited to be a guest speaker for sharing some education things and personal finance lessons, and like it's a beautiful thing. And for people to come together like that, and imagine what we could do with you have families who each have skills and can contribute. Schools typically don't utilize those community assets that are like it's not just about child learning or adult learning or parent education. It's this community learning and engagement, so that like in theory you may or may not have as much of a distinction of like, you go to work or you go to school, then you come home and you never talk about anything. Like, one, how are kids supposed to remember everything in their lives when it's so disjoint? And if you don't come home and talk at the dinner table about what you learned, or if you ask your teen, how was school, and they're like, it was good, and then they just eat dinner, and then they don't really process anything. Like, that there's a lot there, and there I think some of that is that you can tell that there's something missing when we're not excited to share about our days, when we're not we don't build off of each other's wins and successes and struggles, and find those connections, and then those how do they interlock and fit together. So
I know that before, so I was mostly homeschooled, but up until the age of 7, I still went to public school.
mm,
And my dad always hated the fact that I would go to school and come back and just never speak about it.
so
Like,
that was when you were in up until 7 in public school?
yeah.
Ah, okay. So what was the experience like? Did you remember not enjoying public school? And which I know was in a different country.
A different country.
Well, then here. Although you're sounds like you're gonna be in the US soon.
Maybe.
We'll see.
Um, I think I enjoyed school. I was always quite a people pleaser.
Hmm,
So I always liked to please the teachers and get on with them and do well. But I was on a children's social level, I was being bullied. So it's kind of mix and match there.
mhm.
But
Yeah.
the actual classrooms and everything, I really enjoyed them. I think of the maths, I've always had a bit of a problem with maths.
Yeah.
I can do it fine, but I just don't like
Well, I have thoughts about all that. I think that our math curriculum in particular needs a revamp. And there Oh boy. I could just go on for hours and hours about math. I think we maybe shouldn't even get started, 'cause I was a math
it.
teacher, am a math teacher. Um, and so, yeah, I like, those are things that we can pilot even. Like, it's not just about the pitchforks again, it's we want I would love if there would be almost groups of people who were interested in different, like, lanes of education. Like, if there were a bunch of students who wanted to take a couple weeks and see if we could, like, do school a different way, and that would be like a pilot. But then there would be like the greater, almost like a political group who want to engage, their different politicians or reach out to influencers to try to get a movement going. Think about branding and hashtags and something that could like sweep the nation and the world. To have to have folks who are like when I was in theater, we have a crew, right? So you have folks who are with the technology, costume design, set design, construction. You have the direction team, like a stage manager, and there are people who want to be in those support roles, who want to be building things. People who want to code, people who want to do physical stuff, and then there's going to be people who want to be on the social committee and or the sunshine committee, or whatever the thing is that people have the ways that they want to contribute to something that all kind of works together, but it's still like differentiated for how much people want to contribute and in what ways. And to me, like that's totally possible, because if you're going to have a scaling system, it should work as soon as you have enough people to create something like an ecosystem, and we have the technology to connect each other instantaneously, and it doesn't take a lot of resources. I mean, in theory, we could start a movement for free and get a viral movement. Remember, we had the ice bucket challenge a few years back, and it was something silly like that. It's just like you've got a bucket of ice, you pour it on someone, and then now millions of people are doing it. It's like if we could do that, like how can we not have uh, you know, dope development of public education when that's actually meaningful? I mean, like that's one of the biggest things that it just kind of rocks me to my core, is that we have this enormous issue that it's almost like in the book Maniac McGee, where he's like chipping away at this giant rope knot and he's trying to untie it, but it's all like crusted over, so he's like picking away at it, and it's like we're looking at this giant knot and we're like, not for me. I wish that was undone, but I can't do anything. And so like when like we have teens who are getting almost all of their information from TikTok, like all of their news. And people are running genuine businesses, earning incomes on social media and doing amazing things of doing live streams and saving to the cloud experiences of their lives that are beautiful. Even like my mother-in-law, she'll be cooking or eating, and she just has like six of her friends who are watching her live stream of her making food because she's
Aw.
an amazing cook. And like that's really cool. And like I've always been scared to do that because I'm like I've always been a more private person as a school teacher, and I don't want to put my stuff out there. But that's really great for folks to use technology, to use it to its fullest potential. And so kind of blending all that, and if young people realize that they can make use of this for good, like for change, we have more power than we think. And once we start putting a little bit of focus on that and having it be where we're not using it flagrantly to just like incite anything that's chaotic, but something where we're coming together towards more public systemic equilibrium. Like that concept I think is quite important, where you have like that order where you're coming towards equilibrium, and chaos where you're going outwards, and you need both of those in your life. You need to have that balance and harmony of you've got your emotions where something's really raw, and you're turning outwards, even you're feeling something that you can't contain, but then you're using different metacognitive at the individual and at the collective levels, these metacognitive strategies to reel it in and fully complete that experiential learning cycle, and to be
I
having that ebb and
literally just
flow.
wrote a project on this.
Really?
Yeah. It was in the fairy tale of the 12 Dancing Princesses. And it was
Tell me
all
about it.
about how that fairy tale was being the archetype for chaos and order, and how they were combined together within the characters, and how it was shown how it doesn't work if you focus only on one of those elements over
Mhm.
the other. And yeah, so it's just crazy how it one fairy tale ties in perfectly to what you're saying.
Well, and I think it's one of the beautiful things about a great story, especially ones that have stood the test of time, like fairy tales,
Yeah.
or the hero's journey. arc, for example. I mean, these things, like, we're drawn to them. It's not only because there's you'll see that, like, in religious stories as well, but it's just it's kind of the nature of growth, I think, for there to be like, even in the LDS church, there's this pride cycle where you'll have civilizations and people who you'll have this cyclical nature of, things are going good, so you get kind of like prideful, and then it leads to your demise and your fall. But then you kind of like repent, and then you sort of build back up, and then you have this growth period, and then it goes back toward pride, and then it kind of comes. And so that cycle, like, you can see that in all of our lives. And in some sense, that's there's I almost envision life as like a staircase, or like a roller coaster, where you kind of level up at times. Like, you'll have these immense challenges that you may have brought upon yourself, or that have come because the cards have been dealt in a certain way. And you'll get to a point where you're like, I don't know if I can do this. And you have to be really creative and, like, almost faithful or trusting in those moments, where,
Mhm.
like, for example, like, we're doing something that we technically cannot do yet. Like, we're trying, like, the development of public education, Wequil, all these arms that we've got, it only works when we fully utilize our support systems and come together in the name of truth and goodness and justice and righteousness and fairness, and all of the things that are ideals, that it's not even like American ideals. There
Mhm.
there is a universal understanding that peace
Yeah.
and harmony through a lens of love is fundamentally good. It doesn't matter who you are, what you look like, although it does matter too, because that's part of the nature of it. Like, everybody matters. And when we come together, and we have ways for each person to come together and contribute, and actually have their voices be heard, and it results in meaningful change, and that each person is an asset. It's, to me, it's like, it makes everything flow. And you can have that ebb and flow and that harmony continuously at a systemic and at a local level. Which, like, that to me, like, you can probably hear, like a lot of my mental models have that order and chaos different um at different levels of like locality, because in each person's brain, what we teach as teachers is kind of like being the CEO of your brain, where you have an understanding of how learning works, and learning is a process. But what sort of opened my eyes is, like, when I became an instructional coach and started to think about what's the next level, about organizational, being a CEO of your brain, but everyone kind of doing that in a collaborative way. Like, there is also a process of learning that I think is fairly universal for collaboration across even more than two people. And it all starts with that concept of trust.
Mhm.
Like, for if people come together and there's a real problem to solve, and we don't start with trust, that is the chaos piece of where people are just going to get mad and like be arguing all the time. But if you start with understanding why we're here, what's our motivation, right? These are the five components of trust, where you have to understand, what is our angle, what's the direction of our moral compass, what's our why, and then our intention. What do we want to actually have happen? What are our goals? And what do we mean when we're saying all these things? Then we need to be consistent. We want to have a history together. So we don't even want to try to solve anything at first, but we want to demonstrate that over time we can be consistent and reliable. So that's kind of forward looking as well. And we need to be transparent with each other, that honesty and openness piece, so that we're not just like, kind of like pretending to know things, then we're putting words out there, and then we don't want to seem like we're stupid, so we kind of roll with that, and all of a sudden we're kind of lying to each other. We're not fully being transparent, and it leads to this, CYA, or kind of cover your ass atmosphere, because especially if people are working for pay in a system that is run by someone else, when it comes down to it, people need to put food on the table. We got to take care of our families. We need to pay the bills. So it kind of limits what we're able to do at a more deep level. So that's why, like, I think with something like a pilot, we don't want to have incentives that are not actually aligned with what students need, because, practically speaking, people need to get paid. But if you I've found that if we try to solve our problems from within as paid employees, there's gonna be some, like, as much as everyone wants the kids to be successful, if someone is at risk of losing everything, their livelihood, and then their own family can't thrive, and they lose their job, they lose their house, can't pay the mortgage. It creates a barrier to creativity that just can't work. So, like, having a separate program where trust is the first part of the process, and that is a model for something greater, so that we can have social trust at scale. To me, that is such an important concept for people to understand, so that we don't come together and say, how can we solve this problem? But no, it's like, how can we reflect within ourselves so that we can start with a blank slate and have that calm and that serenity, that sanctuary, so that we can actually be creative? Because if we come in with our issues that we're really passionate about, that are technically a bunch of band-aids that are all valid, they're all absolutely valid, but we don't think about our why and our motivation as a community, that I think is one of the risks that we run. And so having trust be at the forefront, to me, so far, it does seem to be a through line. Where do you how long do you think someone would want to do a summer program for? Like, do you think a 2-week summer program, like if it's like a day program and there's like 6 hours a day or something for people to come together, or maybe it's just like a continuous thing where, people want to come, and there's an evening, whatever, after something. How long do you think it would take to pilot something like this?
I'm not quite sure, but I think if you're thinking of like a regular student who perhaps does go to public school, then having it run all throughout the summer, I think, would be the best option for all people.
Okay.
Because then when somebody might be going on holiday for a few weeks, or somebody else is just doing something else, even if everyone's schedule does not align, if it's being run continuously, then you will eventually get all of those people in the net,
Yeah. And
even if it's in the same day.
I feel like too, the having options for how long you engage for, I think, will be important, because I don't think people can commit to a whole month of their lives, but there will be some people who will be very interested in that. So, for example, like if we have like a video or like a daily live stream or something that goes out, kind of like, maybe there's like a historian who kind of leads that. You might have like a student leadership team situation, whether it's a president, historian, I don't know.
Mm.
But if someone wants to do something cool for a day, like I'm thinking, if you're 15 and like, you're working at the pool or whatever, but you've got a day off. It's like, oh, let me do something cool and meaningful. And what can me and my friends do? Oh, let's go and be on the Care Show, or go on the Dope podcast or whatever, and then we can interview people, get some data feedback, and maybe they can go out and do something in the community. But something where it's like, however, it's like a differentiated model of engagement to change the world. And like, who wouldn't want to be in the credits? Spend one day, kind of be an extra in the dope, revolution. Like, that's cool. And if you want to go to town and be on the full, spectrum of everything, and turn it into your whole summer, I think there should be that option too, because there will be people who want to do that. You think that makes sense?
Uh-huh.
Sweet. Well, and then I think too, this managing this is not going to be easy, because, well, one, I think when it's focused on the kids, you really can't go wrong, especially when the kids are empowered to do something for themselves. But I think as soon as you start using the C word, change, people just start getting very upset, and all of a sudden people got problems, even if it's from the kids. And so, like, if there's someone who is across the world, or gets politicized, or gets picked up by someone, like, I I worry about, well, something like this hasn't really been done before, but it also needs to be done. But
Yeah.
how can we do it in a way that mitigates the amount of risk, and so that it's also planned carefully enough where it's not uh, even at face value, nothing can go wrong, even if the worst thing could happen. Like, for example, like having like it's pretty harmless to for people to come together and have a conversation. I mean, that is like, it's also another thing I've learned. Like, what are the types of things that people can all come together and do something? And believe it or not, I know this is cliche, sharing is caring. And having a conversation where we just kind of share something. No, we're not talking about anything. We're not having a discussion. I've also learned there's a difference between a dialogue and a discussion. Discussion is where we actually talk about change and make decisions. We don't like that at first. Okay? Dialogue, sharing, trust. And I'm also saying that a little bit facetiously, but also not. Like that's a real thing. Like when I encounter someone and they kind of already have an idea about what to do, it's like, are we really listening to each other? Are we really talking to each other, or are we talking at each other and trying to convince each other to
Yeah.
do the idea that we have? And that we know is kind of what we see in the media, and what we see even in schools. Because at schools, like, it's like, well, that sounds like a good idea, but we're required to do this. So it's like, okay, well,
Mhm.
now we're not really talking about anything real. We're kind of like, uh we have chains behind our backs, and we know technically we could do this, even if for a moment, and break free to have a real conversation, but we just don't have time or resources for that. So how do you think someone could be involved at a distance for something like a summer program, or even in a different country?
Um, well, it would be through the online format, but one example I was thinking of is uh you know how you have those pull down whiteboard screens in
Hmm.
classrooms?
Yeah.
Well, if you had one of those in the room that you guys are getting, then you could project uh the Zoom video of a distant student onto it, and they could give a talk or a presentation, and it'd be like they're still being present in
Hmm.
that space, even though physically they aren't there.
Okay, so
So
trying
that'd
to
be one way of getting around it.
Yeah, so trying to do, like, the concurrent, like, basically, if there's ever things like meetings, to have people come together. That kinda reminds me of, like, the sci-fi shows where you've got, like, a hologram of, like, everyone's around a conference table, it's like, "Ooh, ooh," but then there's, like, someone who beams in. It's either on a big screen, or they, like, pop up from the console in the middle of the table, and they're like a little projection. It's like, "Hello, everyone," and they're, like, looking around at everyone, but it's like you can just kind of put your arm through this light beam of a person. What if Does Zoom have that yet? Do we have hologram, Zoomogram yet?
I haven't heard of it.
I could totally
I
see
hope
Tara,
you do.
like we put on, like, a VR headset or AR glasses, and then, it, like, overlays Tara. She's just, like, in the middle, kind of, like, dancing, like, "Hey," but you're just, like, sitting there, and your avatar is just, like, dancing away, which that would get kinda trippy, I think, at some point. But that's something that I think we would talk about, like the possibilities for how we could collaborate. And we already have all these filters and deep fakes and AI generate this and vibe code that. Like, there's a lot of sort of existential crises that we need to wrestle with to even think about the future of education, because it's not just, oh, well, how do we teach the kids different, or giving students choice. But no, like, there are real forces that are not really penetrating school, that are they're impossible, seemingly impossible for people to deal with, even outside of education, like just in life. Like, I've got parents and educators who come up to me pretty consistently, and are like, look, my teenage child is coming home. They've been deep faked, or they've been cyber bullied, or they've been, something's been generated, or they twist, and it's like, this is really tough. And so it's not going to be as simple as just, oh, well, what do we do with the phones, or what do we do with it? Again, those are each these it's so tough to see folks suffering with these genuine, valid concerns. But when we come together, I think what people need to understand is that those concerns are not necessarily root causes of the systemic issues. And we need to focus on first principles. We need to focus on our foundational pillars of humanity. Also, legal compliance with existing frameworks. That's why I think grounding our discussions at the highest level from, let's say, the government, or in our founding documents, in each state, particularly with education, what are existing graduation requirements, standards, curriculum. Just like in Virginia, we have the profile of the graduate with the 5 C's that I've talked about ad nauseum. Where can we start there and have at least a common vision, so that we can have an anchor? But then the models, so like option one, option two, option three, of what we can actually do, are aligned with that. And I think we have a pretty good high level vision about the theory before we have something like standards or requirements. I think we start there, and then it's like, oh yeah, well, you can't really argue with communication. I mean, critical thinking, I mean, who's going to say no to critical thinking? So like, start there, start with let's care, let's have the kid, but then even the purpose of education is one of the first key topics, because you can even have what we believe in and who we are, but why have education? I mean, it was the first podcast we did a few weeks ago, when we were talking about the historical perspective. It was excessively liberal to, even for our founding fathers here in the States, to consider free public education for um, all ish, and like, yes, like, we need to still believe in that. But after that, everything we do, of even it's controversial to say that the purpose of education is about the collective. So like, about the economy, about national defense. That's kind of what the narrative has been, at the government level in the past, like, 70 years, after the world wars and everything. But before that, it was like, well, maybe it's personal intellectual development. Well, that's a different purpose. Maybe it's both. That those, I think, are good conversations for us to start with after we sort of have like a little bit of an anchor, because some of this is vocabulary too. Like, what's the difference between learning and education? What are some philosophies of learning that are actually in congruence with reality? How does learning and what is s- some parts of brain chemistry, and how we process information. Um, and then when we actually have models of instruction, how are those in alignment with how our brains and our emotions actually work? So there's a lot of things that I think we also need some expert guidance, but also some good old people to just kind of think through in simple terms. What are we going to do? What do we feel good about? But make sure it's also grounded in reality. So there's a balance that I think we'll find will be a sweet spot, and we need to find a way to come together and have it not be chaotic, and have it be where we can sort of flow together. So that's sort of what I've been thinking about the past couple days, and it's really helpful too, Tara, to have someone who's able to bounce these ideas off of, and someone who's not, well, one, not Joe, because more ideas, and to really sometimes I get that from folks who are uh, 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 the idea generators, because more is like, it can create more chaos in my brain too. And
Yeah,
so to
it's
sort
like
of
a painting
process,
match.
yes, yes, yes. And I can do that too. Like, I consider myself a good listener, but in this live stream, I'm doing a lot of talking. I feel
Mhm.
like this is more talking than I'm used to, but that's also good for me too, for me to kind of just like uh, uh to spit it out. And if I say something that I need to reel back, Well, that's why we've got friends like yourself.
It is.
So, maybe let's leave it there, Tara. I'm gonna keep. I'm actually going over to the academy, helping with moving some stuff over today. So I'm gonna
Ooh.
go do that. Maybe we'll be on the phone later in a group call, or just the two of us, or chatting. Keep planning for this. So,
You
um,
need to put some pictures in one of the rooms.
pictures of.
The actual location.
Oh, yeah. Of course, yeah. I've been taking some pictures and a little bit of video, and we can maybe we can have like a little video of like, hey, this is the new place, kind
Ooh.
of document that because it will be cool to see the transformation
Yeah.
of it. Oh, that's a good idea. Thank you for that. So, thank you so much for your help again, Tara. As always, you're amazing. You rock. And have a great rest of your day.
You too.
Bye.